Picture this. The year is 1948. The world is still recovering from the ravages of World War II. In the midst of this global healing, in a small region at the eastern end of the Mediterranean, the seeds of conflict were about to sprout. This is the story of Palestine, a land claimed by two peoples, the Jews and the Arabs. Let's take a step back to the year 1917. The British government, through the Balfour Declaration, expressed its support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. It was a statement that would echo through the decades, fueling the hopes of Jews while stoking the fears of the Arab majority. Fast forward to 1922. The League of Nations granted Britain the mandate over Palestine, giving the British the responsibility to implement the Balfour Declaration. However, this was no easy task. The Jewish and Arab populations held opposing visions for the future of Palestine. With the end of World War II in 1945, the world was left in shock by the horrors of the Holocaust. In response, Jewish immigration to Palestine surged. This influx of people put further strain on the already tense relations between the Jewish immigrants and the Arab locals. The land was the same, but the people, their stories and their claims were as different as night and day. By 1947, the tension was palpable. Palestine was a powder keg waiting to explode. The United Nations, in an attempt to prevent an all-out conflict, proposed a partition plan. This plan divided Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem under international administration. However, the Arab states vehemently rejected the proposal. They saw it as an infringement on their rights and an endorsement of the Zionist project. The Jewish agency, though not entirely satisfied, accepted the plan. As tensions reached a boiling point, the United Nations intervened with a partition plan, but it was rejected by the Arab states, setting the stage for the 1948 Israel-Arab War. On May 14, 1948, Israel declared independence, and the very next day, the war erupted. Suddenly, the world was watching as the newly formed State of Israel was thrust into a conflict with its neighbors, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, and Iraq. The war was not a singular battle, but a series of intense confrontations that spanned several months, each one crucial in shaping the fate of the region. Egypt, the most populous Arab country, was the first to strike. Their initial strategy was to secure the Negev, a vast desert region in southern Israel. Egyptian forces made rapid advances, intending to cut off Israel from the south. Meanwhile, Syria and Lebanon concentrated their efforts on the northern frontier. The Syrians aimed to seize control of the Galilee, while Jordan's forces, backed by Iraq, focused on the central and southern parts of the new state, particularly Jerusalem. The first few months of the war were marked by fierce battles and shifting front lines. The Battle of Latrun, for instance, was a key confrontation. The road to Jerusalem ran through Latrun, and control over this strategic point was crucial. Despite repeated attempts, the Israeli forces were unable to capture it from the Jordanian Arab Legion. Then there was the Battle of Yad Mordecai. Here, a small kibbutz held off the Egyptian army for 5 days, slowing their advance and buying precious time for the Israeli forces to prepare their defenses. The Israeli military strategy was one of necessity. Outnumbered and outgunned, they focused on defending their territory, consolidating their forces, and launching counterattacks when possible. It was a daunting task, but the Israeli forces showed remarkable resilience in the face of adversity. Throughout this initial phase of the war, the Israeli forces were constantly on the back foot, but they managed to hold their ground. They knew that every inch of territory they could hold on to was crucial for the survival of their nascent state. Despite being outnumbered, the Israeli forces managed to hold their ground. By the end of 1948, the tide of the war had begun to turn in Israel's favor. As the second phase of the war unfolded, Israel's position shifted significantly. This was a time of critical battles, of strategic maneuvers and missteps, of foreign aid and influence, and at the heart of it all, the resilience and determination of a fledgling nation. The Battle of Fallujah, for instance, was a decisive moment. Arab forces, concentrated in the town of Fallujah, found themselves surrounded by Israeli troops. Despite the Arab Legion's superior training and weaponry, the Israeli forces held firm, cutting off supply lines and gradually wearing down the enemy. Meanwhile, the Battle of Latrun was another key confrontation. Despite several attempts, Israeli forces couldn't capture the strategically important Latrun area. However, they ingeniously built a bypass road dubbed the Burma Road, keeping supply lines to Jerusalem open and maintaining the city's lifeline. And then there was Operation Yoav, a large-scale offensive that aimed to drive a wedge between Egyptian forces in the north and south. The operation was a success, resulting in significant territorial gains for Israel and a severe blow to the Egyptian forces. Throughout this period, foreign aid played a pivotal role. The newly formed Israeli state received significant support from countries like Czechoslovakia, which provided much-needed arms and military training. On the other hand, the Arab forces struggled with logistical issues and a lack of unified command, hampering their ability to effectively counter Israeli advances. But perhaps the most critical factor in Israel's favor was the strategic mistakes made by the Arab forces. Their failure to coordinate their efforts and their underestimation of Israel's determination and resilience contributed to their eventual downfall. By the end of 1948, Israel had not only survived the onslaught, but had also expanded its territory. This was a testament to the indomitable spirit of a new nation, one that had endured great adversity and emerged stronger, reshaping the map of the Middle East in the process. With the ceasefires of 1949, the war officially came to an end, but the repercussions were far-reaching. As the smoke cleared and the dust settled, the landscape of the Middle East had irrevocably changed. The aftermath of the 1948 Israel-Arab War was characterized by a myriad of significant shifts, both politically and geographically. One of the most striking outcomes was the displacement of Palestinians. Hundreds of thousands were forced from their homes, becoming refugees in their own land and in neighboring Arab countries. This displacement created a humanitarian crisis that has persisted for decades, with generations of Palestinians living in refugee camps, their lives irrevocably marked by the war. Simultaneously, the territorial gains of Israel were substantial. The nascent state expanded its borders well beyond the original partition plan proposed by the United Nations, securing key areas that would prove crucial for its survival and growth. This territorial expansion would set the stage for future conflicts as the borders drawn in the aftermath of the war became points of contention in the region. In the wake of the conflict, armistice agreements were signed between Israel and the Arab states involved in the war. These agreements, however, did not signify peace, but rather a temporary cessation of hostilities. They marked the end of one chapter of conflict, only to lay the groundwork for the next. The political implications of the war were far-reaching, not only for the Middle East but for the world. The establishment of Israel and the resulting conflict brought the region into the global spotlight, influencing international relations and shaping foreign policies. The war set a precedent for the involvement of foreign powers in the region, with the United States, Soviet Union, and European nations all taking an interest in the outcome. The 1948 Israel-Arab War marked the beginning of a protracted conflict in the Middle East that is still unresolved today. It was a defining moment in history that continues to cast a long shadow over the region, shaping its political, social, and cultural landscape. The aftermath of the war is a testament to the enduring impact of conflict and the complex challenges of seeking resolution. The 1948 Israel-Arab War, a pivotal event in Middle Eastern history, was shaped by a complex mix of geopolitical, religious, and social factors. This war, often referred to as the War of Independence or Nakba depending on one's perspective, had a profound impact on the region and its people. In the prelude to the conflict, we delved into the historical context, where the tension between the Jewish and Arab communities was already simmering beneath the surface. The UN's decision to divide Palestine into Jewish and Arab states added fuel to the fire, setting the stage for a clash that would reverberate through the decades. The outbreak of the war saw a flurry of military activity, with 5 Arab nations, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, launching an invasion on the newly declared State of Israel. It was a time marked by fierce battles, shifting front lines, and a struggle for survival. In the turning of the tide, we saw how the Israeli forces, through a combination of strategic planning and sheer determination, managed to regain lost ground and even expand their territory. The David versus Goliath narrative became a symbol of Israel's resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Then came the aftermath. The war left deep scars on both sides, with thousands of lives lost and many more displaced. The armistice agreements of 1949 established new borders, but did not bring about a lasting peace. Instead, they sowed the seeds of future conflicts, with the Palestinian refugee issue and the status of Jerusalem remaining unresolved. The 1948 Israel-Arab War is more than just a chapter in history books. It's a story of human resilience, of ambitions and aspirations, of dreams shattered and hopes reborn. It's a narrative that continues to shape the Middle East, influencing its politics, its societies, and its relationships with the rest of the world. In the end, the war changed the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East, leaving a legacy of conflict and tension that continues to this day. Thank you for watching the Jig channel. Please like and subscribe.